Okay.
I've got a question. The main question is, from me, is I live in Hull. Obviously, it was my brothers and sisters who were involved in the Lindsay dispute. And Paul's was rather quiet when he explained how he lost his job. Well, Paul lost his job because he took one of the most fundamental reasons where members of the trade union were with, because he refused to cross the picket line. His action was illegal, he never had a ballot, he never did anything else, he refused to cross. All the action that the Lindsay dispute people took was illegal and against the law. Just as the Tolpuddle martyrs did, it was illegal and against the law, but the one who won a massive victory. The Tolpuddle martyrs were repatriated back to this country. Paul is now a successful journalist with the Daily Mirror and our own local regional magazine that Unison put out. And I want to ask the government minister, does he support the action the Lindsay strikers took? If not, why? And when will the Labour government repeal all the Tory anti-trade union legislation we have to work under and we are abused on a daily basis?
It's just a matter of legislation. It is a matter of self-confidence and collective self-confidence that we can actually do something about organising our own lives and the way we work. That's what has been missing, I think, in terms of the political will. And I think with Joe's Union, Unite, they're demonstrating a serious effort of political will to make things happen. I'm glad that the two unions have got together. That is one way in which the unions can beat the credit crunch and beat the recession, is by pooling their resources, getting together, and also by encouraging their members to stand up and fight for themselves. That wasn't a top-down dispute at the oil refinery in Lincolnshire. It was the men themselves who said, we're not having any of this, and came out on unofficial strike. For me, that was a really heartening sign. And it demonstrates that just have that sense of nerve and get on with it, then even if there's no guarantee that you're going to win, there's only a guarantee that you will lose if you
Sorry, Donnacha DeLong, I'm on the NUJMEC and I'm also a United Top Steward. To add to the point about Lindsay, we also look at the Biscuit strike, which was incredibly encouraging. That was also illegal. Unions are still suffering under ridiculous laws that prevent us taking action. Ban on solidarity action. Ballot processes that take a ridiculously long time. When we're talking about redundancies, for example, in small businesses, the ballot procedure takes longer than the redundancy consultation. We're also looking, and it's interesting that the Mirror and News International we mentioned, sweetheart deals with unions that do not represent the workers. NISA in News International is a recognised trade union, despite the fact that it is not a trade union. In the Mirror, we still have a situation with the BAJ, which does not, I'm not sure how many members it has, but I know when it was in the Racing Post, it had no members at the end, yet maintained its recognition until the Racing Post was sold. These laws are preventing unions taking proper action to stop job cuts, leading to the situation whereby the government has to take action for the unemployed. If we could take proper action to stop the cuts, to defend our jobs, then maybe we wouldn't have the same situation where there are rising unemployment figures that require the government to step in and take action.
If the government wants to win another term, if the Labour Party wants to do well in the next election, whenever that is, then they should make serious gestures towards the trade unions, which will kind of secure the support of the trade union movement. Now, over the action at the Lindsay oil refinery and similar cases like that, which ban that kind of action and which ban secondary action, which I'll come back to in a moment, it seems to me the government could take some quite decisive action to make things easier for workers to resist the kind of things that was going on there. For instance, the regulations, the EU regulations on posted workers mean that it's impossible for workers in Italy, for instance, if there's workers here taking action to try and improve their wages from an employer such as Total that pays those people less than British workers are getting, it's now illegal for workers in Italy to take action to support them. Now, the British government could launch a high-profile campaign to repeal that legislation. That would, I'm sure, secure some support, and it would be a gesture towards the trade unions that would say, we're working on your behalf. Secondly, from my own union's point of view, when the two of our biggest campaigns this year, as I mentioned before, have been at the Yorkshire Post and at the Daily Record in Glasgow. Now, in both cases, the Press Association essentially ran a strike-breaking operation. The Press Association, for those who don't know, it's a big national news agency that provides, if you like, kind of official versions of the news. Now, they have a large operation just outside Leeds in Howden that does an awful lot of other things. It produces the Radio Times and lots of listing magazines. But when there's industrial action and journalists are not working, they provide information and stories to those newspapers. Now, we're not allowed to picket the Press Association's offices because that's secondary action, despite the fact that that organisation is quite clearly disrupting and trying to break our strike. Now, that's not acceptable to us, and we'll be campaigning not just to try and get that law repealed, but also to get inside the Press Association, because we're not recognised there. So that's a big target for us. But it would be a gesture by the government, I think, to say that in the next term, we'll repeal that law and allow trade unions to take action to defend themselves.
I'm also Vice President of the Dorset branch of ATL, and my point was, in terms of things that the Labour government have done, they've done quite a bit for us as support staff, in that we have no national pay and conditions. In other words, we can change from one LEA to another, and our pay can drop or rise, and it doesn't mean that we do anything that's any different at all. And the Labour government have actually established the support staff negotiating body, which is just coming on stream now, so I wondered if, first of all, maybe Jim might like to don his old hat and tell us some more about that. Thank you very much.
One of the things I'm proudest of in my 3 years as Schools Minister was to be able to decide to set up the School Support Staff Negotiating Body. I couldn't have made that decision without Ed Balls, the Secretary of State, supporting me in doing that. And having taken the legislation almost through its parliamentary journey, I took it through the Commons. We now have some certainty, I think, that body will be set up. We did it in the end with very little opposition because despite the fact that we're setting up the first pay body in the public sector for some time, people in the end recognised the argument that was made by unions like ATL, but also GMB, Unite and Unison, who came together and worked with us, worked with me in my ministerial office in just the way that the Labour movement should work. All the reasons why the trade unions set up the Labour Party in the first place. And it's a success story that I think we should celebrate.
The fact that it's easier in this country to dismiss workers than it is in most of the rest of mainland Europe. And I can't help but recall, I think, one of the comments of I think it was Tony Blair himself soon after New Labour came to power, that we had to ditch the social model of the European Union of the 60s and 70s and embrace this new deregulated system of the economy. Now, neoliberal economics has really been discredited. The model that was established by Margaret Thatcher's government, and unfortunately to a large extent continued by New Labour, admittedly with some very important safeguards built in, but nevertheless a system based on a faith in the market rather than the intervention of socialist planning, surely has really been discredited with the ravages of the global economic crisis that we now see.
From Brighton home, I was very encouraged to hear the remarks of the Minister about how the public sector can hopefully sort of be some sort of driver to the economy in the present recession. And I was hoping we might hear a commitment from him, therefore, that there'll be no attempt to freeze our pay, for instance. There'll be no attempt to make the public sector try and make up the huge deficit that was created by bailing out the bankers, who haven't had a pay freeze as far as I'm aware, and just to reassure us that we're in safe hands.
I'll certainly be arguing, and I think I can give you some confidence that the Cabinet majority will clearly be arguing, and I've no idea where Alistair will sit on this, so I'm not saying he's against it, but that we've got to use the public sector and use public sector workers and keep faith with them, both in terms of their pay now, but also in terms of the final salary pension schemes.